Here we go. Beautiful. Alrighty. Hi, friends. I've never done this before. Hope it's working. I guess we're gonna find out. I am working on my tambour embroidery project. And if you're watching live, welcome. But I think probably most of you are gonna watch the replay, and it's okay. But I'm just gonna sit and work for a little while and maybe chat. I've never done a YouTube live before. I do them lots in other places, but this is my first time on YouTube, so hopefully things go well. And if not, probably won't do it again, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm gonna switch. Here we go. So I can see you. Say hi in the chat if there's anybody here. I don't really know how that works, but that's okay. I'm just gonna hang out and stitch for a bit. I'm working on this little section here that I'm working on is like a background fill of this copper thread, and it's called Vermicelli stitch. All of tambour embroidery is chain stitch, but Vermicelli specifically is this sort of like wiggly fill stitch that is used really quite commonly in tambour embroidery work, which is really cool. Like, it's cool to see it and spot it and know what it is. I think of it in my head when I think of vermicelli, which is a type of pasta, it's a type of noodle, but also it makes me think of worms. So in my head I always call it the wiggly worm stitch, and it makes me smile. But anyways, vermicelli is really, really handy because it kind of breaks up a background, but it doesn't introduce, like, you're not doing parallel lines, which can be quite jarring in some cases. And you can do a really like loose, large vermicelli stitch if you want to leave a lot of that background fabric around, or you can do quite a tight one. And actually, this one's kind of somewhere in between. I've definitely done vermicelli fills that are like wider, more dispersed than this. But this actually in here is all vermicelli as well, except there's a bead on every stitch instead of in here where I'm adding one every sort of couple stitches. And I've also tightened it up so you can't, like, it's so tight that you can't see the background fabric at all. So it's really versatile. I quite like it. We're going to talk about some of those stitches in my next video in my Learn Tambour Embroidery series that I'm working on right now. But I haven't quite gotten there yet. So there's vermicelli, and there's like sort of rope type textures that you can do, and lots of other things like that. I'm so sorry, I need to blow my nose. It's been one of those days, allergy wise. Give me one moment. And if you're hanging out and you want to say hi in the chat, I can read the chat. I'm not going to lean over and type responses, but if you want to say hi or something, that's cool. It looks like there's maybe one or two of you here, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, like I said, very first YouTube live experience. So hopefully things go well. Who knows? But otherwise, I'm just gonna hang out and talk to myself for, I don't know, half an hour or an hour. We'll see how we go. The other thing about this particular stitch that I'm working on right now, like the way that I'm working on it, a lot of my tambour embroidery I do upside down, which is the Luneville method, where the front of the work faces the ground. And I'm not doing that right now, as you can see, because you can see the beads. So I'm adding the beads on the top, which is the Ari method. which is really handy sometimes. It's not as fast because, as you can see, I have to stop and collect a bead every time I want one. I could hold a couple on the needle, but since I'm only doing one every few stitches, it kind of makes less sense. But nobody's in the chat. Come on, give me something to talk about, guys. What was I gonna say? Oh, the reason I'm working from the top right now is because since tambour embroidery is a chain stitch, it forms that like actual literal chain, and the double loop part of the chain, if you will, appears on the side that the tool is on, so the side that my little tambour embroidery hook is on. And I want that double loop. There's a single thread on the other side, on the bottom, in this case, and I want the double loop of my metallic thread to show, because it's basically like showing twice as much thread on top as it is on the bottom. It's a terrible description. If that was an edited video, I would have edited that out. That's okay. Yeah, but I want it to be more obvious. I want my metallic thread to be more obvious, so that's why I'm stitching from the top. Even though I am using all one bead here, one of the other benefits of Ari style, where you're stitching from the top like this and you're picking up beads, is that you can change which kind of beads you're using really, really easily. You just go grab a different one instead of using whatever one you're using. Whereas when you're working in the Luneville method, you're kind of stuck with whatever is pre-strung on your thread. But this works well for what I'm working on right now. The other thing I'm going to work from the top, perhaps after we finish this section, is the satin stitch fill. So if you saw the thumbnail of this video, there was some purple silk sections, and that is going to be like in here, in that little area, and in all the little sort of leafy areas of this design. So I need to do the satin stitch for that, and I'm going to work on that for the top for exactly the same reason, because you get 2 threads on the top and 1 thread on the bottom, so you get a nice dense satin fill, which is quite nice. There we are. I'm going to zip up around. One of the things with vermicelli, like traditionally, right, is you don't want... You want to like fill a section, and the goal is that you have your stitching start and end in the same place, so it's continuous, so you don't have any end points, and also that little wiggly worm shouldn't, in theory, cross over itself. And I say sort of shouldn't in theory because in reality you can do whatever you want, because it's your embroidery project and who the heck cares. But I am trying to make it so that it's not super obvious. Since this background area that I'm filling is so complex, I can't really do it all in one, because I don't have room to sort of go back and forth in an area. I'm getting stuck. Like right here, I'm coming back down in this direction, and I'm going to get stuck. I'm not going to be able to go all the way back, so I'm going to be tying off the thread and then jumping over, probably over here, and doing kind of the same thing. I saw... This is semi-related. I saw an Instagram comment about somebody's like detail work the other day, and she said, usually what I say is, if somebody's judging you, if they're that close that they're judging you for something like that, you've got other problems. But her sentiment was, if you're that close that people are judging you for things like that, kick them. And I thought that was really funny. We got a comment, friends. Hi. I'm starting timber as soon as my supplies arrive. This looks intriguing and I look forward to starting. Yay, I'm so glad. That's so exciting. I'm really, really, really excited that other people are going along for the ride with me on this as well. I've been meaning to film these videos for quite a while, and I know that people are kind of following along at the moment, and that's like really super stinking exciting for me, because I don't have that many friends that I get to talk about it with in person. I know one other person in Auckland, which is where I live. I live in New Zealand. I know one other person here who does tambour embroidery. And all my other tambour embroidery friends, and I do have, you know, a few. Here we go. So I've got to the end of this section. I've pulled up a loop. I'm going to trim it with my teeny tiny scissors underneath. All my other friends who do tambour embroidery live in my phone on the internet. And that's really, really cool, right? It's cool that I get to have those friends and do those things and, you know, take people along for the ride on stuff. But I'm so glad you're here. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you. thank you for leaving the first chat in the live chat as well. Okay, here we go. So I've done this little section. I'm gonna fill the rest of this background. I'll show you sort of like this, right? So this whole background up there, I'm gonna fill the rest of this one. There we go. And I think I'm gonna start in here and I'll come up and come around and probably get stuck again and have to come back around. Also, I missed a bead on my stitch over here. It's very annoying. I'm gonna have to go back in and fix that, but that's okay. I'm gonna adjust you slightly again. Sorry, there we go. Hopefully that works. And I'm starting my stitch inside of another stitch so that I can make it nice and hidden, so it doesn't look like I've got a whole bunch of like disparate things going on, because that's kind of not cool. That tail is going to get super in the way. I'll fix that in a moment. This is one of my favorite little things to work on. It's a lot like knitting. Once you get the hang of it, it's not, I won't say it's an easy skill to learn, but it is just the one stitch. And once you get the one stitch down, you're kind of off to the races, which is really, really cool. And I love it so much. But it is very sort of methodical and repetitive in a way, but also like I get to sit here and make these teeny tiny little creative decisions about where I'm gonna send my little stitch next and how many stitches till I add a bead. But it's very relaxing. I like it a lot. Oh, it has occurred to me that the sound might not be great. If you guys are watching and you think that I could do better with the sound next time, let me know, because I'm all the way over here and my laptop is the thing with the sound. Oh dear. I hope it's okay. I hope you can hear me. Otherwise I'm just talking to myself and you're watching my mouth move in the void. That's problematic. Oh, that's funny. I'm sure it'll be fine. Fingers crossed. I'll have to watch it back afterwards and see how it is. Anyways, this project is going to be it's going to be a little capelet. So it's, I feel like there has to be a better word to describe what it is I'm talking about than capelet, because capelet feels like a word I made up. But it's basically this little thing that's going to go over the shoulders like a cape and hang down. It doesn't have any sleeves. It hangs down from the shoulders and it ends just below the elbow, just below my elbow. And it's open in the front and it's going to fasten at the neck, sort of like at the top of the neck area. And, oh, here we go. I have my phone volume turned up, but I can hear fine. Oh, beautiful. Thanks, guys. Okay, good. I might try to, maybe I'll try to adjust it later. I do have a microphone, like next time I do one of these, I do have a microphone that I could use. It's just like one more thing on the screen, and thing to keep track of. But thank you very much. I'm glad you can hear me. I'm glad I'm not just shouting into the void. That's helpful. Anyways, yes, it's going to be like a little capelet. It has this scalloped hem, so this little area that I'm working on right now is quite near the hem. I'm thinking, I'm not sure if it's going to have a collar on it or not. I don't have to decide that right away, thankfully. But I could do like a little, I would do like a simple stand collar if I was going to do one. Bead, here we go. But I haven't quite decided. I might leave it plain and just turn under the top if I don't want any additional business going on. If I am going to do a stand collar, I would do the embroidery on that as a separate piece and stitch it all together right at the end. This is a really narrow section that I'm working on. Whoop! I lost a bead somewhere down there. Oh, there it is. Come here, friend. I lost it again. There it is. Bronze bead hiding with his little bronze friends. Okay. There we go. Draws from a 14th century word. But as a word. Oh, there we go. It is a word. That's awesome. There we go. Okay, so it's a capelet, which I have interpreted in my brain to be a small cape. So it's a small cape. A short cape, I guess. Not small, short. But it is going to be full, so it's a little over a half circle skirt, sort of, or half circle, I suppose, pattern piece. And it's going to have these little sheer sections, so you can kind of see what's going on underneath, like whatever dress I might be wearing underneath it. So I think it's going to be really cute when it's done. And the cool thing about this design, as far as things that are relaxing projects, is, what was I going to say? Oh, it's all, this sort of design, this particular design has a lot of repetition in it. So there's a lot of, this little guy, this like section that I'm working on here, there's 16 of those, and this just the repeat all the way around the base of the capelet. And so it's nice because I only had to sit down and do that design once, and I was only experimenting a teeny tiny little bit, and now that I've got it, I just get to kind of sit and stitch and not make any decisions, which is really nice. And that's not always what you want, but it's what I want right now. See, that tail's in the way. I'm going to stitch over it, and then I'll just pull it out later. And once again, I have cornered myself. So I will just take these last few stitches and then cut the thread and find a new spot to start. And yeah. Alrighty. There we go. Final stitch is going again into a previous chain stitch. And I'm going to find my scissors. There they are. And I'm just going to pull these tails underneath. I'll weave them all in at the end. Because I'll weave them in from the back so that you can't see them. I'll just pull them under now so that they're not in my way now. There we go. Making progress. How about, how close together these ones are. I might not even go down in there. I might go up and then sort of loop in and then come around and do it that way. Because this was there was room for me to do a little wiggle, but there's not really room for me to do a little wiggle in there. All right, that's what I'm going to do. There we go. Could you have started where you were going to end? No, that's a good question. Could you have started where, so the question is, could you have started where you're going to end up ending? This is not meant as a criticism because I don't know anything. That's totally fine. It's not a criticism at all. So theoretically, yes, 100%. This stitch is called vermicelli, and the proper, quote-unquote, way to do the vermicelli stitch is that you want to start and finish in the same place, and you want to endeavor to not cross over your work in any place. So vermicelli, if you think of it like a noodle, right? The noodle lays and the noodle does not cross over itself, right? Or the worm, or however you want to put it. But because I'm using it as this background fill for this area, and this area is so little and complex, I keep working myself into corners. This was the thing I knew what was going to happen. I keep working myself into corners where I can't backtrack. So I started over here, like the first spot that I was working on was this little area right here, and I'm going to be ending over here because I'm going like up and around. But there are sections where I work through and then I can't backtrack because I'm focused on the consistency of the spacing between my little wiggly worm vermicelli stitches. So I don't want them to be too close together because you'll see it'll look like this really dense area of thread, whereas other areas are less dense. So the sacrifice that I'm making is that I'm having to stop and start and move around and jump through. But theoretically, if you had like a square of space that you were working in that didn't have anything else, or if the area was a little bit bigger, or if I was happier to do stitching that was a little bit more dense, then yeah, 100% absolutely you start and stop in the same place, and that's kind of ideal. but it doesn't work in this particular case because the shape is so complex. I hope that makes sense. And then we got another one. I really enjoy the combination of beads and satin thread stitches. Yeah. On my how-to series. Yeah, so my next video, the one, I haven't filmed it yet, so it's probably going to be coming out in the middle of next week, or sorry, the middle of this coming week, because I'm going to film it over the weekend and they take a little while for me to edit because I am slow. The biggest things that I'm going to be covering are sequins and bugle beads and then stitch patterns. That's kind of like the topic of that video. Sequins and bugle beads pretty straightforward. Stitch patterns is kind of interesting because all of tambour embroidery is a chain stitch, but there are obviously different configurations of chain stitch that you can work that result in very different effects. So your example of the satin stitch is a really good one, right? Because the satin stitch, by the time you're done with it, is still a chain stitch, but it looks nothing like a chain stitch by the time you're done, right? It just looks like a satin fill, which is really, really cool. Like, it's fun that you can sort of disguise it that way. So I'm going to be doing little demonstrations all in that one video, so we're not going to spend too much time on any of it, but little demonstration of this sort of like rope texture that I get in here, how you get this sort of really dense fill, which is just a really dense vermicelli, how we talk about the lines, and then also I'll do the satin stitch as well. And I think I've got a few other things. I made a list. I'm not looking at my list right now. I made a list. But yeah, so we are going to go through some of those things, and then the video after that, so that's kind of like, if we think about the skills you should have at the end of watching each video, right? Currently where we're at is you should be able to add beads to your stitches in 2 different ways, should you so choose, or one or the other if you have a preference. I think you should try both, but I'm biased, so that's fine. At the end of this coming video, the one where we talk about the different sort of stitches and configurations, you should be able to sort of make a little sampler. So do and practice all of those little stitch patterns individually and kind of see what you like and what you like about the textures and how you feel about certain things, you know, all that stuff. And that's going to be very individual, right? I have strong preferences about the textures that I like, and I know that other people don't share those preferences necessarily. And then the video after that, we're going to talk about design process, which is where it gets really, really individual and personal. And I start being able to help less. But what I can do is tell you what I do. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of inspiration. And also, I like listening to what other people do and hearing about their process, because sometimes people say things and I'm like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But it helps me figure out what my version of the good thing that I want to try is. And I'm hoping, even if you think that my design process is the dumbest thing you've ever heard, that it gives you the inspiration to figure out what your design process is. And at the end of that one, you'll be able to, like, hopefully you'll be able to do a little design of some description. And after that, I think we'll finish probably with a Q&A episode. And then I think we'll be done, and I'll just be back into like showing you videos of my projects and stuff like that. And that's obviously not going to be the end of the tambour embroidery content, but it will be the end of the how-to series, which I think is really exciting. And then obviously if we come up with any really good ideas for follow-ups, I will stick those in there as well. So if you have an idea for a video you'd like to see that wasn't what I just covered, got some comments. Great turnaround. Oh, thank you. Is there any chance that you've put together a kit for sale that would go along with your classes? So I'm working on something. I don't have anything at the moment, so I can't direct you to anything to buy, but I am working on a kit that's going to go with a class with somebody in a embroidery specialist shop in the United States. She's based out of Chicago. And I'm working on so that would come with a project, and I would stitch through the project with you. I'm going to move the camera a little bit because you can't see what I'm doing. Here we go. So yeah, I would stitch through the project with you in videos, and the videos for whatever project that would be gated, so you'd only have access to them if you bought the class and the kit. and then the kit would come with everything you needed to make that project. So it would be kind of like, with my videos on YouTube, I want to give you the skills. You kind of need to like do your own projects, but if you want step by step, that sort of thing, that set of videos just, you know, helps to fund the bead fund. If there's a little bit of dollar exchange involved in this terrible capitalist society that we live in. But I don't have anything yet. What I have that I'm working on in the short term is a list of sources. And it's long, and unfortunately, the reason I'm working with this embroidery shop in the US is because a lot of my sources are like New Zealand based or places that ship to New Zealand easily because that's where I live. And I know that that's not where everyone is, so I want to kind of make it a little bit more accessible. I feel like, is that focusing? There we go. Sorry friends, it's blurry. There we go. Yeah, so I think it'll be fun when it's done. It's just, we're just not quite there yet. Takes a lot of sourcing, all of these little supplies. Of interest, the thing that is causing us the most problems with sourcing at the moment is the tambour embroidery tools themselves. There are a lot of them available online, but they're vastly different in quality. There's a really big difference between the nice ones and the not nice ones. And the not nice ones are like reasonable, but it's such a lovely experience working with lovely tools. So I want to make sure that I can provide that in the kits. And if you simply cannot wait for that, you said you're looking forward to it, so you probably will wait, and that's delightful and amazing and awesome. But if you've got a project on a deadline that you want, if you go back to that first Learn Tambour Embroidery video in my series, I've popped in the description, I've popped in some links for sources that I use at the moment, for things that I like. So that is there. Should you choose to accept it. Cool beans. What else we got going on? That was what I had to say, so now there's a lull because I'm thinking of something else to say. Talked about this project already. This project isn't for anything. It's just because I want it. The ones that I have planned, so I bought all the beads all at once because my beads come from the States, which is very, very annoying. But so I buy them in large batches, and I tend to buy them like when I went to visit my family in the US in July. So I saved up all my dollars, and I bought a whole bunch of beads for 4 projects in July when I went back so that I wouldn't have to pay for international shipping, which is terrible, especially because beads are quite heavy. And I bought all the beads for this project. And then another one that I'm working on is like a bustier dress that's going to have a really abstract, lovely design that I'm really looking forward to. And it's fabric. It's quite sentimental fabric that I dyed myself. And I dyed it for my wedding. I was going to use it as an underlayer in the wedding dress, but I ended up not doing that. So I have this fabric that I essentially dyed for my wedding, and it's in like all my favorite colors, and it turned out really beautifully. And it was kind of too pretty to end up as an underlayer, so I didn't use it for that and various other reasons. So now I want to make a whole dress out of it. It's an organza, so I'm going to be beading with a relatively abstract pattern. I'm going to be beading the bodice of that dress. Well, beading the bodice and sewing the dress, because I do all my beadwork flat. Almost all my beadwork flat. I know it's not an accurate way to do it, but I'm looking forward to making a Byzantine-inspired tunic with glass beadwork. That sounds amazing, and accuracy is overrated at best. I think you'll get the Byzantine look with that sort of thing. That's really awesome. I'm super excited for that as well. So you'll do probably, just the way that I'm picturing it, it would be like a whole bunch of one bead in like a geometric pattern, I think? Correct me if I'm wrong. That sounds like such a cool project though. I follow, what's her name? Virtuous Courtesan. can't remember her name, something like that, on Instagram, and she did a 1910s sort of, it was a dress, right? But it had, the beadwork that it had on it was this sort of really gorgeous geometric border, and it went down the edges of the skirt, and it was so cool and so beautiful. And when I think of my tambour embroidery projects, right, I sit down and I'm like, I'm gonna do a whole thing covered in beads. And she just did this one little embellished section of an overall really nice dress. And like overall, like the purpose of her dress was not to have, like, not to be covered in tambour embroidery. She just did it as this little feature element, and it was just this one type of bead, and it was like, it was so punchy and so cool, and I loved it so much. But and it really, I feel like I need to challenge myself now to do something that's like where tambour embroidery isn't the point, it's just like also present. But yeah, that's right, you got her. Say that about accuracy. That's right. I think so. My thing is, it's important to know the rules so that you know how best to break them. And I currently, right now, am breaking rules. There's a lot of, because there's these two styles of tambour embroidery, right? There's the RA style, which is the original style that originated in India. I talked about this in my most recent video, the beadwork video. Ways to add beads, right? So there's the RA style, and then there's the Luneville style, which is what it got taken over to France. The French people loved it. They thought it was awesome, and they were like, hey, we can change this slightly, turn it upside down, and then we can pre-string the beads, and we don't have to worry about stopping to pick them up. And so it ended up in this tradition, right? Because aside from importation of goods, India and England were not, or France really, were not on sort of equal terms economically, to put it nicely. So they didn't really, the styles diverged without any sort of other connections to each other over time, right? And so the people that practice the Luneville method don't particularly enjoy some of the upwards facing, you know, like physical, like this end up sort of techniques. And obviously the RA folks have their own tradition, and they don't like to turn work upside down, because why would you do that when their work works just as well? But it's like knowing, I've lost my little loop right here, there we go. Knowing why and how each of those traditions, each of those different sort of, you know, beadwork lessons works the way it works, allows you to pick and choose and adjust and make the thing that is best suited to whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? So my work is very much a mixture of RA and Luneville. Right now, this would be considered more RA because I'm working from the top. But there are a lot of people that will only do one or the other, and it's very limiting. I think it's very limiting, but I'm not following anybody's rules. Oh, that's funny. A little tangent, I suppose, but very cool. But yes, that Byzantine dress, did you say, or Byzantine outfit? Tunic. Byzantine inspired tunic. That sounds awesome. That sounds really, really cool, and I hope you get the look you're going for with your beads. If you are using all one, I definitely recommend the Luneville method, working from the bottom, all one kind of bead, because it's so much faster to not have to stop and grab a bead like I'm doing every time my hand disappears. I mean, you can see in my little video there. Stop and pick up a bead every time I do it. Byzantine colors have a lot of pearls surrounding other gems, and ooh, I am not picturing the right thing at all. That sounds even more amazing. Pull from architectural motifs. Okay, so gems and geometric designs surrounded by pearls. That's really cool. That's awesome. That's gonna be I can picture it. It'll be all sort of dripping with gems and crystals and such. One of the things that I really like is Chaton Montes for my little crystals. That again was in the thumbnail of this this video. I'll be applying crystals to the little edges. Hang on, actually they're right here. I'll show you what a package of them looks like. These little guys. They've got this little cross back. Some of them have holes. This one has little channels on the backing, and then there are these little prongs that hold the gem in place. Sometimes I stitch those on with my tambour hook, and sometimes I just go on with a needle and thread and do them. It kind of depends on how many. If I'm only doing one or two in a particular spot, it's not really worth doing the tambour embroidery. You can just sneak in there with a needle and thread relatively easily. Tambour embroidery works best for volumes. But those are really, really cool, and they're very, they come in a lot of different colors. And I like them a lot for adding a little extra sparkly touch. There we go. Okay, so I've worked myself down through this super, super narrow area, and I don't think, well, I'm certainly not going back up in there, but I think I'm gonna loop in, I'll loop in here and do that section, and move you a little bit so that you can see what's going on. There we go. And then I'll break the thread and pick it up again. Really surprised the cats haven't come to say hello. That usually happens by now. One of them's right here, but she hasn't woken up from her little nap. That's okay. If she did, she'd probably just try to chase the beads anyway, so best not. See how much more fun this is when I have something to talk about? I think I already talked about all the things I wanted to talk about. I talked about the stitch and the project. I'm gonna run out of things eventually. I'm trying to, so my highest priority at the moment for YouTube is to get the next videos, well, the next video, but also the rest of the series done for learning tambour embroidery, so nobody's waiting for me, because I want you guys to be able to learn from all of this, which is exciting. But after that, I kind of have to figure out, I might do some, like, I tried to do vlog videos, like everything I made in a week, which was really fun, except I'm not that fast at editing. So it was like, here's everything I made in a week, but by the time I actually got this silly thing edited, you know, I had made more stuff. But I need to figure out what other videos I want to make and start doing some of those things as well. But we'll see. I have time, because I still have a couple of the Learn Tambour Embroidery videos that I want to get through. Come on, friend. There we go. Is she out of focus again? There we go. Oh, I didn't finish telling you about the other projects that I'm going to be working on. That's the other exciting thing. There is a really cool one. So I told you about the there is a really cool one. There are really cool ones. I told you about the one that I'm making with the sentimental fabric for my wedding dress, but I'm also doing one that is going to be a bustier that I will wear with something, and a pair of opera gloves, which is super exciting because they're going to be stretchy because they need to sort of stay up, and the easiest way to make that happen is to make them stretchy. So I think I'm going to go down, up. I might be able to come back. If I play my cards right over here, I'll be able to double back. Yeah, okay, cool. Bustier and opera gloves, and the opera gloves are going to be stretchy, which is going to be really interesting to work on, because, and it's going to be an experiment is what it's going to be. We like an experiment. Since it's going to be stretchy, I'm using a, I think it's called Seriflex, the stretchy thread. And I'm really, really curious to see how it goes. I have no idea. I need to do a sample. I probably should have done a sample before I committed and bought all the beads, but it is in fact happening. I'm going to make it happen. If I need to troubleshoot and do something else, I will. But I haven't seen a lot of tambour embroidery on stretch. The stitch is a little bit limiting, but I think combined with the gentle stretch of the stretchy thread, the elastic thread, I think it's going to be really cool, and I'm really excited about that, and I like an experiment. And it's about time that I did some other tambour embroidery on something weird, because I really enjoyed the tambour embroidery on silicone project that I did ages ago. So I'm going to do more stuff like that. But yeah, what's the other one? The bustier and opera gloves, this peacock cape. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to go in a different direction. Here we go. The last one is like a Grecian inspired dress. It's going to be super draped. It's going to look like wearing a sheet to a toga party kind of thing, except that it's going to be draped silk, so it'll be nicer than a sheet. I'm doing a bobinette semi-sheer corset, and it's going to be sort of draped over the corset, and then the fabric is going to be draped over the corset to sort of make the skirt and shoulder detail. And I'm going to do a combination of tambour embroidery and stump work to do 3-dimensional flowers and leaves and maybe some little forest critters, and then I'm going to cover that semi-sheer corset that I'm going to make out of bobinette in like very woodland fairy inspired motifs and stuff. That's going to be really cool. I planned for that to be my Frocktails dress this year, but Frocktails needs an organizer if it is going to happen. So we don't actually have a date. We don't know if it's going to happen or not. But again, I have purchased all the supplies. So the dress is going to be happening, and if I have nowhere to wear it to, so be it. I'll still have made a lovely fancy dress. But probably be expedited a little bit once I have a timeline for said fancy dress. That's okay. Can I use Gutermann's clear thread? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've used the Gutermann one. I have just it's like a monofilament thread. Oh, look, that bead is not fitting on that. I haven't had one of those in a while. These are usually relatively consistent. This is a limitation with working from the top. You can only use beads if they fit over the hook. That one doesn't fit. I don't think I've used Gutermann's one, but I have used a monofilament thread, like a quilting monofilament thread, invisible thread. Yes, absolutely you can. It doesn't set very nicely while you're working, but you can steam it afterwards, and that helps. But other than that, and also watch your tension. I find with threads like that, like the thinner it gets, the easier it is to hold on to it too tightly. And not let it, you want to let it slide easily through your fingers. Otherwise, your work will sort of crunch in on itself. But yeah, absolutely, you can use, I mean, you can kind of use any thread. It's just that ones that are more tightly spun, more tightly plied, are generally better because they're less snaggy. Doesn't mean you can't use ones, just means they're going to be a little snaggy. I use silk. Silk is super snaggy. But it's worth it for the effect that it gives. But yeah, absolutely you can. Silk elevates anything. Yes, absolutely. It'll be dyed. I don't know what color I'm gonna dye it yet, but I'll dye it. I've got like a gauze, silk gauze, a really lightweight chiffon to use for that particular project. But yeah, it'll be nice. Just gotta actually get into it. There we go. Another one. What's going on? There we go. Okay. Go zip around. So this was a little questionable, this little section here, but I'm gonna do it anyways. I'm gonna backtrack the way I came, So instead of cutting my thread, so I have to go up and then I have to go all the way back down. Here we go. Add another bead. I really like the combination of these. This color, the bead color is called bronze. Can you guys see? Oh, we're going up on behind my video. Hang on, I gotta adjust this slightly so that you can see it. There we go. That's a little better. The bead color is called bronze, and then the thread color that I've got going on is called copper. And they're very different colors, of course. The bronze is much darker, and the copper obviously has that sort of orangey tint, but they complement each other very nicely. I'm very surprised. The copper was a little bit of a risk. I was originally going to be using a bronze thread, but I felt like it needed a little bit more of like a light, punchy kind of color to brighten things up a little bit, because I've got some green that is super punchy, but it was kind of the only thing that was adding that vibrance in and amongst the dark, moody purples. So, and I don't get me wrong, we love a dark, moody purple, but it sort of needed a balance in its colors a little, and I'm really glad that happened. But yeah. Alright, I think what I'm gonna do is finish this section in here, and then we'll sign off our live stream for the evening. So I have a little bit of preparation I need to do for dinner before John gets home from work. And also have to figure out why the cats are being so quiet. One of them's right here napping right next to me on her heating pad, but I don't know where Theo's gone. I'll make sure he hasn't gotten into any trouble. There we go. You don't see? Your work is amazing. How long have you been doing this? I learned in 2017, which does not seem like 7, 9, 10, 6 years? Doesn't seem like 6 years ago. I say 2017, it does not seem like 6 years ago. I learned in 2017 in preparation for making my wedding dress. So my very first ever properly big tambour embroidery project, besides like a couple of little samplers and testers, was my wedding dress. I started in 2017. I finished we got married in February 2019. I wasn't working on it constantly that whole time. I was working on it kind of nights and weekends, and I did the whole everything else as well. So I dyed the fabric, and I drafted the pattern, and I built the corselet structure, and all of that stuff. But the beadwork was a really big part of that. And I had the dress finished, I think, before Christmas, so technically it didn't take 3 years, it took 2 years. But yeah, so my very first ever tambour embroidery project was my wedding dress, which was very much like a thrown in the deep end kind of vibe, and which I love. Like I think if you're gonna try something that you really want to learn, it should be on something that you care about, and not some silly little sampler that you just think you need to do because it's important to learn. Like if you want to start with your wedding dress, start with your wedding dress. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so I learned it for my wedding dress, and sometimes I learn skills and I use them for like their intended purpose on a project, and then I kind of park them and don't use them anymore. Like for example, I taught myself shoemaking, and I make shoes, but I only make shoes when I want a new pair of shoes, right? And like I don't feel the drive to make shoes all the time, right? But tambour embroidery, right? So I'd worked on this project, I'd worked on my wedding dress for just about 2 years, and I was like, it was kind of like my second fiance, right? I came home every night before, and I had to hide it from John. He's a paramedic, so he was working shift work, which was really convenient because he'd be, out on a night shift, and I'd be there sitting in the house doing my embroidery. you know, I spent 2 years with this thing and I loved it, and then I finished it, and I was so excited to be, you know, the anticipation of building up and finishing your wedding dress that you've been working on that long, right? Was so exciting. I was so thrilled to be finished, and it fit, and it, you know, was a good experience, and I had a dress to wear because there wasn't a backup for that. It was just, I'm making my wedding dress, and if it doesn't work, don't know what we're going to do about that. But I was so sad when I finished it that there was no more embroidery, that there was no more tambour embroidery, right? I was just kind of really, really like lonely without my best friend. And a simple solution to that problem is to start another tambour embroidery project. So I started another one. I had Frocktails a couple of years ago, 2019 Frocktails, which was at the end of the year, so I had a couple of months to work on this project. But yeah, my next project was 2019 Frocktails, and that one went a lot quicker, partially because there was that deadline, and partially because I was practicing and sort of getting better at things. And then I just kind of resolved to always have something on the frame, so I try to have a new project sort of ready whenever I finish one. So like I told you, I've been shopping for 4 projects all at once, and they're all kind of like, I kind of planned them all at once. And then this one, I'll finish this one, I'll pull another one onto the frame, I'll, you know, and in that sort of time frame, I'm sure I'll come up with other ones that I want to be doing as well, other little projects to make. And then, you know, there's the little ones in between. So yeah, so I did the flapper dress. I've done a couple of little smaller projects like bras. I did the back of a bra. So like meant to be worn with a backless dress. So the front of the bra is very plain, and the back of the bra has this little insert. So if you know, were wearing a backless dress, you'd see it. A couple of little clutch bags. Love a clutch bag. We did, actually this time last year, a friend and I decided that we were going to go to the Art Deco Festival in Napier, which happens once a year, every year, and celebrates the 20s, and everybody dresses up in their little 1920s outfits, and hang on, I'm going to move you. Everybody dresses up in their little 1920s outfits, and there's a costume contest, and a Gatsby-themed party, and, you know, tea in Charleston on the lawn, and all of these kind of fun, very exciting things. And we had planned, my friend that I was going with, she does pinup competitions, and she's sort of part of this dressing up community, right? I'm not. I'm part of the make your own clothes community. But I'm very much not part of the sort of, you know, going back in time and dressing up. Although I think it's really cool, I just haven't really done it. So this was my first time doing that, and I was like, okay, I'll just, you know, we'll come, I'll have some stuff. And she was like, no, Kat, you have to wear a different outfit every day. And then there's a separate, you have a day look, and then you have your competition look for the competition, and then you have an evening look, and you can't be seen wearing the same outfit twice. And all of these rules, I was like, okay, well, we're gonna do it this way then. So I had this whole complete thing that I made a recreation flapper dress, like an authentic silk recreation flapper dress. And I have my little flapper top and some other things that I had made with little headbands that sort of go low on the forehead, you know, and little bags to go with them. And then the Art Deco Festival got canceled because the cyclone came through North Island, New Zealand, and we weren't able to go because the whole town was underwater, and it was horrible. Which, like, obviously I'm sad I missed the festival, but there's so many other more things to be sad about in the context of what happened with the cyclone, so on balance. I'll have other opportunities to wear the dresses, but I still haven't actually worn them, which is a little bit of an adventure. Can I use any type of fabric if I just want a little bit of trim? Yeah, so tambour embroidery works on any fabric that you can pierce with the hook, but it is way easier, especially for a beginner, if you can see what this hand under here, if you can see what that lower hand is doing. And it is really just best if you don't choose a fabric that stretches. So if you're, so I was talking to somebody on Instagram DMs recently, 2 or 3 days ago, who's making who's embellishing a denim jacket to wear to the Taylor Swift Eras movie tour. And she is trying to work with what she has because she's on a little bit of a timeline. and she's decided to just do her tambour embroidery. It's gonna say something on the back, a couple of words on the back, nothing major, but she's working directly through denim, which is awesome for her first project. She's doing it. She sent me a picture. It's successful. I wouldn't recommend that for a beginner, but she has a project that she's passionate about that she wants to do, and she's making it happen, and that's really cool. So yeah, I really wouldn't recommend tulle. You can if you have to, but tulle stretches. And you'll end up with, basically you end up with puckering if your tension isn't exactly right, and that's just a lot to ask if you're also learning. But yeah, you can do tambour embroidery on anything that you can pierce with the hook, including leather. I've done leather, I've done silicone, regular, like crepe de chine, cotton, linen, whatever you want. Alrighty, I have finished my little section, my friends. Thank you for hanging out. I think that's all I've got. So I have to go do life stuff. I have to go get ready for dinner and all of that. I'll show you on this little camera so that you can see what I've been working on. I'll show you my whole project, and we'll end it like that. So I know there's a little bit of a lag with the chat, so if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and I will answer them. But anyways, this is gonna wiggle a little bit, so just close your eyes if you're not keen on that, but I will move you around like this. And then, all right, so this is what that section's gonna look like when it's finished. they're so shiny. I've got my sequins in here. I've got those little Chateau Monte crystals that I was talking about in the big green section up here. I'm gonna have a little crystal in here. I just don't have those yet, but that crystal is gonna be a large version of these same little crystals. So I'm gonna do that on all of the rest of these and all on that side as well. And then the middle section has, come on, focus. There we go. The middle section has these sort of rows of 2 different colors of the pink amethyst seed beads. I had a plan for what was going on up here, but I've decided that I hate it now, so I need to redesign what's going on up here. But that's basically the cape. And then I need to do all that on the other side over there. And yeah, that's my little project. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I'm gonna pop you back in here, and I'll just check to make sure we don't have any more questions. There's that. Thanks for hanging out this evening. And I'm sure we'll be doing some of this again in the future. So I set this one up on a warning so that you could sort of like set a reminder for if you wanted to hang out. But I'll probably do that again, and I'll try to let you know when the next one is. In the meantime, please subscribe if you're not already so that you catch the next Learn Tambour Embroidery video when it comes out. And I am also on Instagram and TikTok, and I have a blog, catmakes.com. Also, actually, if you want to see pictures of my wedding dress and the rest of my tambour embroidery work, the best place to do that is on the blog. There's a link that takes you directly to the wedding dress stuff, and there's also a link that takes you to my tambour embroidery portfolio, where you can see a couple pictures of each thing instead of a million pictures of one thing, if that's your jam. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thank you for all of your delightful, amazing questions, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.